Barcelona SC coach's comments after what Messi did in the match. Barcelona SC head coach Cesar Farias appeared at the press conference after the 2-2 draw against Inter Miami with an obvious mix of frustration and realism, as if he understood that what happened that night hadn't simply been just another game, but a direct clash with footballing forces no team can contain when they're at their peak. Farias sat in front of the journalists, rubbing his hands over his face, as if trying to organize his thoughts before speaking about a match that ended up being decided by a detail. A detail that, when Lionel Messi is on the other side, can be enough to tilt everything. Farias began, in a calm tone but loaded with emotion. What we saw tonight was an extremely tough test, not only for us as a team, but for any team. When you face a player like Lionel Messi, a player capable of making the difference at every instant, the margin between success and error becomes so small that you can lose it in a second. He paused for a few seconds before continuing, as if mentally replaying the entire match, from Messi's first touch to the way he kept gaining an advantage with every directed control, every turn, and every pause. He added, "It's hard to describe what Messi does even when the game is tight, and there isn't a rain of goals, because he doesn't need to turn this into a festival to be decisive. Sometimes a single play is enough for him. One space, one read. Every touch of his, every movement off the ball, every time he draws markers and forces the line to readjust was a clear message that we were facing a player in a different category. A player who plays the match with a mental speed that's impossible for any defense to anticipate." Farias spoke about Messi's goal, calling it one of the turning points of the match. The way Messi scored that goal was an example of confidence, timing, and precision. It wasn't simply a ball that went into the net. It was a statement that Inter Miami has a player capable of changing the course of the game whenever he wants. And that's what weighs the most, because you can do a lot of things right, but if, at one moment, you give him half a meter, he'll make you pay. Farias explained that the goal didn't only affect the scoreboard, but also the feel of the match. We saw how Miami's players raised their tempo after that action and how ours, though it might not have been obvious in every movement, started to feel the psychological weight of having to hold the game together against a team that, with Messi on the field, can manage the game from calm or from acceleration, depending on what suits them. Then he went on to comment in greater detail on other interventions by Messi that, even if they didn't end in a goal, he said were just as decisive because of the way they shaped the game. He pointed out that on nights like these, it's not only about the final shot, but about what he creates beforehand. He said, "There were passes and touches from Messi that don't show up as a goal in the result, but that break you from the inside, because they look simple, they look normal, and they're not. They're touches that change the direction of the attack, force you to shift late, split your line, make you hesitate. We were pressing well, we were closing spaces, and suddenly, with a single touch, everything reorganizes in their favor." You don't see these kinds of actions much, but they happen when the ball is at Messi's feet. He added about a stretch of the match when Barcelona SC thought they had managed to contain him. "In some moments, we thought we had managed to contain him. We had reduced his space, forced him to drop back a bit. We surrounded him with 2 or 3 references. But Messi doesn't need a lot of space. He needs just a few tenths of a second to find an angle nobody else sees. And he does it without it looking like effort. For a team, that's brutal, because you feel like you're doing the job correctly. And even so, he finds the way out." Regarding another specific action he described as the toughest psychologically for his team, Farias was direct. "There was a play, with the match already in a difficult moment, where we were trying to hang on and impose ourselves again. We were showing a reaction, trying to create chances, and in an instant, with no warning, Messi slips a touch that leaves us exposed and forces us to sprint back toward our own goal. It might not end in a goal, but it kills you inside because it makes it clear you're chasing something you don't control. That's the difference between a normal player and a player who turns the impossible into routine." Farias explained that the problem wasn't only Messi's individual quality, but the influence his mere presence exerts. When you have a player like Messi on the field, the opponent is forced to completely changed their defensive behavior. Our players started to feel like they had to be close to him all the time, and that created spaces that Inter Miami took advantage of extremely well. You're facing a player who draws 2 or 3 defenders toward him and then, calmly, decides where the ball should go. And even if he doesn't deliver the final pass, he's already shaped the entire play from before. In a calmer tone, he also spoke about the mental aspect that made the difference. The hardest thing wasn't running after the ball, but running after the ideas Messi generates. He forces you to think more than you need to. He forces you to make rush decisions. And that's what happened with some of our players at several moments. That kind of mental pressure is what separates the great players, and especially Messi. Then he directed sincere words to his players and the fans. "I'm not angry with the players, not at all. They gave a great effort. They tried with everything. They had. Maybe we weren't at our best in some details, but we competed. And in a game that ends 2-2, it becomes crystal clear how razor-thin everything is when you're up against a player who's impossible to contain when he has his day, because he doesn't need much to leave his mark." To close, he spoke about the importance of learning from a match like this. We'll go back to the videos. We'll analyze every play Messi was involved in, not to blame the players, but to learn. Learn from the details, from the small mistakes, from the spaces we didn't close, from when we let him turn, from when we arrived late to cover. These are the matches that build strong teams if you know how to face them. And he concluded by expressing deep respect for Messi, with an unusual sincerity. "I know our fans have mixed emotions.